Jammer, the E3 Nintendo Direct concluded with Banjo-Kazooie and Smash Brothers. And then at the end, they're like, stick around, we have one more announcement. And it was like, what could have topped that? What could have topped Banjo and Smash? And well, a Breath of the Wild sequel. Yeah, that'll do it.
You can't just, what's gonna trump, nothing could trump Banjo-Kazooie and Smash. Unless it's a new Zelda.
Without question, that was probably one of the most exciting announcements of the Nintendo Direct, if not one of the most exciting announcements of the entirety of E3 2019. Because, well, it came out of nowhere, and this is something everyone wants. There are some things interesting around this announcement that I do want to talk about. First off being, well, typically, E3, for Nintendo anyways, and for other developers, obviously, is the time where they start announcing games coming out in the next year, as well as talking about stuff coming out within the end of that current year. However, if you look at it in the Nintendo Direct, Breath of the Wild 2 was actually the only new game announcement, which is quite irregular for Nintendo. They usually have a couple of games brand new that they're going to be talking about here at E3. I mean, yes, there was a first reveal showcase at Animal Crossing, technically also Luigi's Mansion 3, and of course, we learned about the delay for Animal Crossing, so it's not like Breath of the Wild 2 is the only game we know coming out, outside of 2019. But it is the only game announced at E3, which is a weird thing to think about. But I think that's actually part of the reason why it was even in this Direct in the first place. Because we only got, what, a minute and a half look at the trailer. And even that little segment almost has as much as, if not more views than the entirety of the Nintendo Direct video on Nintendo's YouTube channel. So yeah, I think people are excited. I think that was a really key move of Nintendo this year. Yes, they did have a lot of amazing announcements. I mean, the hero for Dragon Quest, like, that was super exciting, especially for the Japanese audience. In addition to, of course, Banjo-Kazooie stealing the show right at the end of the Nintendo Direct. Beyond that, we got our first look, like I said, at Animal Crossing, which I was just speechless. I couldn't even react to it. More on that later. And beyond that, of course, we got a showcase of a ton of different third-party as well as indie games coming to the Switch. So it was a really impressive, jam-packed conference. It was really good on its own, even without Breath of the Wild. But a lot of these series and games they talked about are more specific to certain audiences. I mean, not everyone is a Luigi's Mansion fan. Not everyone, admittedly, is an Animal Crossing fan. Same in truth kind of actually goes for Pokemon Sword and Shield. So each one has more of a selective fan base, while, the general audience of Nintendo, like, everyone loves Mario and everyone loves Zelda. The other series you have more specific audiences they're catering to. I've been saying since day one, so that's even, I'm pretty sure, in my review of Breath of the Wild, that I really hope that they would turn out a sequel within the next couple of years to reusing assets similar to how they did with Majora's Mask. Reuse the physics engine that took them, what, 5 years to build? Like, reuse assets, and improve upon the experience that Breath of the Wild initially offered. Even though it's been something I've been predicting and hoping for, it's still nothing I ever expected actually to even be shown off, let alone announced at this year's E3. Because I think Breath of the Wild 2 is a very important game for Nintendo, beyond obviously just being excited as a Nintendo fan. But there are a lot of people who bought a Switch solely for Breath of the Wild when the game first came out. People bought it because that was the must-have title. That was the reason they got a Switch. And I have personally talked to people who aren't really typically Nintendo fans that, again, are in that same boat, that bought a Switch for Breath of the Wild and have not really bought much sense. Yes, it's their fault. They should buy Mario Odyssey. They should buy Smash Ultimate, Mario Kart Deluxe. There are so many great titles, but the thing is, there is an audience of gamers that own a Nintendo Switch that only bought it for Zelda. And the reason that's kind of concerning is, that audience of gamers, that particular group, may not be inclined to buy the next Nintendo Switch console if they can look back and be like,
well, I only bought it for Breath of the Wild back in the day. I don't really want to buy another $300 console a couple years from now just to buy and play one game.
Because that's really the most important thing for Nintendo, is to make sure people who own a Switch are not only using it as much as possible, but also have a reason to continue to buy games. Because like I said, those gamers who maybe bought a Switch just for Breath of the Wild and have bought nothing else, they might get burnt out from Nintendo and may not choose to carry over to the next console generation whenever that does happen. In turn, will then cost Nintendo a sale that they had, in the previous generation here on the Switch. This is a very smart move for Nintendo. But let's talk about the actual game itself. I mean, a lot of people have already broken down the trailer, gone super analysis mode on it. You're welcome to go watch one of them, because this is not what that's gonna be. Surface level stuff, it's a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, so we can kind of expect things to pick up exactly where things were left off right at the end of Breath of the Wild. Link saves Zelda from Ganon. I really love this aspect, and I hope that Zelda is going to be a main player in this game, because, typically Zelda's kind of always been that damsel in distress, or she's been that, kind of item that you basically need to save or collect at the end of the game. Yes, she's had different appearances throughout the series, like, Spirit Tracks, as well as even technically Wind Waker. She was kind of along with you for your journey. Pseudo. But there's never been a full-fledged 3D Zelda game where, Zelda and Link are partners and working together throughout the entire game. Could this lead credence to you being able to play as Zelda or choose either character? Maybe. I mean, there was those rumors when, you know, there was the first E3 of Breath of the Wild back in, what, 2016, that, you know, there might be a female and male Link. Maybe that idea still kind of stuck with the developers that, hey, maybe we should offer the option for players to play as Link or Zelda. I really hope if it is incorporated that Zelda isn't just the character you switch to like do research tablets or perform magic abilities and you gotta switch back to Link for all your main objectives. I really hope that players, if given the option, you can completely play the entire game as one or the other character and you don't need to switch if you don't want to, or even maybe just choose it out right in the beginning. I don't know how it's gonna function, but I don't want it to be a scenario where Link is still the main character and Zelda's kind of just a side character you switch to every once in a while. A great reference point is to, you know, Wind Waker, where you have Melody as well as Makar as your little partners in those specific dungeons. And while yes, you could control them, but they're, you know, very specific to that dungeon, only really were utilized for just solving specific puzzles in a dungeon. And I hope and pray that Zelda won't be reverted to something like that. Or she could be not playable at all and she's just joining Link along the journey, and that's fine too, but just because, you know, see them at the beginning kind of going in this tomb together, it might lead credence to maybe some sort of working together. Or maybe even a co-op. Who knows? I don't think that'll be very likely, but being able to explore Hyrule with a friend, like, whoa. And that brings me to my next point, is Hyrule itself. Because, I mean, at the end of the trailer, you kind of see it zoom out and you see the Hyrule Castle either falling down or floating up. Can't really tell. There's just dust. But the point is, it's still Hyrule, and it looks like it's still the Breath of the Wild Hyrule that we've seen before in Breath of the Wild. Yeah. Which means it's probably going to take place still in the same open world we experienced already in Breath of the Wild 1. Yes, there'll probably be changes, there'll probably be some new towns, but in general, it might be still the same area. I know what you're saying. No way in heck I want to explore that world all over again. And I don't think they're going to go with that this time around, because I think they've taken the critiques of a lot of people talking about how the story really took a backseat to the exploration that was Breath of the Wild 1, and maybe that's how the experiences are going to be crafted. Breath of the Wild 1 was that open world experience, was exploring Hyrule to its depths, checking out every mountain, and maybe Breath of the Wild 2 will be that more linear Zelda experience that we're more accustomed to from previous titles. Perhaps it will be a more story-driven experience and maybe limit the freedom of the players just a little bit. The point is being, you know, Breath of the Wild 1 is that complete freedom game, and maybe Breath of the Wild 2 is a little bit more linear than Breath of the Wild 1 was, in a good way, you know, to help support the story. And in that way, of course, players won't really feel restricted because, you know, they already kind of explored the entire world. They already kind of know what's on the other side of every mountainside. So if there's some restrictions to where players can go in the sequel, at least on a story-based progress, it won't be necessarily much of a detriment as it would have been in the original Breath of the Wild. Beyond that, one of the biggest critiques was, you know, actually having real... Oh. 1 second. Having formal dungeons return here in Breath of the Wild is something a lot of gamers really craved and wanted in the original Breath of the Wild. Well, yes, you know, exploring through the Divine Beast and solving those puzzles were unique and a very different twist on the Zelda formula. People still kind of crave that original dungeon experience that other typical 3D Zeldas offer. I'd love to see them expand upon how Hyrule's castle was in the original Breath of the Wild, where it felt like a big expansive area that you can kind of explore at your whim, but maybe include kind of more dungeon mechanics like previous Zelda games, like grabbing keys, getting items and stuff like that, in a big area kind of like the castle. I think shrines and stuff still have a place here in Breath of the Wild too, because, you know, it was a really fun way to mix up the gameplay and solve little unique puzzles throughout as you explore Hyrule. But while I think here in the sequel, maybe there'll be less shrines, but more of an emphasis on these big actual dungeons, big story beasts that you follow throughout the game. After seeing that trailer though, one thing immediately came to my mind is like, you know what? We are not going to see this again for a while, are we? I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but more than likely, this might be our last look at Breath of the Wild 2 for probably this entire year. As far as release dates, initially I'm like, dude, we're probably not going to see this for a couple more years. It might not be till 2021. But the more I kind of think about it, you know, they could have been starting development on this sequel really since Breath of the Wild launch. I mean, yes, they obviously had some part of the dev team still working on the DLC. You know, they had the Trial of Champions. In addition to the motorbike trial thing or whatever that was, there was still at least a fraction of the team still working on that. Whether it was the entire team or a small part, who knows. The point is, that team has definitely had some time to already get a head start on this game. In addition to, since the physics engine is already created, a lot of the hard work that really gets the groundwork of the game started has already been created. As far as game development goes, that's really the hardest part of development, is really creating the physics engine that you're going to work in, you know. And since that framework's already kind of set up, really all they have to do for the sequel is start to iterate upon that, create new assets, and really go from there. Kind of giving them a giant head start than they would otherwise than, you know, completely starting from scratch, which is only to their benefit. So while I initially thought they could be really far behind development and this is still well in the works, at the same time, they could have a lot of a head start than we might realize. They might be holding a lot closer to the chest. So there could be a lot more there than we might realize already. So like I said, while I initially thought we might not see it till 2020, it could honestly come out next holiday. This could be our 2020 holiday release game. If so, realistically, I could definitely see, a January/February direct where, they showcase, the stuff for the rest of the year. I think that'll be probably our next time seeing the Breath of the Wild sequel. The only other idea I could think them perhaps maybe showing off could be at the Game Awards later this November. However, I think that might be the time where they're actually going to be talking about the Smash DLC character, whether it be the 4th character if he hasn't been announced already, or at least hyping people up for the 5th character to come out in February or January, or whenever it will probably come out. So I think that's the really only exception of us maybe seeing this game this year, but realistically, I don't think we're going to be seeing Breath of the Wild 2 for a while. For the rest of the year, it's going to be focusing on, the rest of the games coming out. And if they're going to talk about any upcoming games, really the one they should be talking about next is probably Animal Crossing. Once we get our Fall Direct or our November Direct, more than likely, if they're going to be showing off any 2020 games, it's going to be Animal Crossing, considering they have an exact release date, March 20th for it. I mean, what? Luigi's Mansion doesn't have that yet. I think they're still, fall? I think it's just fall 2019 for that. I mean, obviously, it's probably going to be Halloween, October, around there. But that's something, Luigi's Mansion doesn't even have yet. So us seeing more about Animal Crossing throughout the rest of this year is a definite. So realistically, we might not see really anything Breath of the Wild 2 related until right before that game comes out, or like I said, if they do something at the Game Awards. Again, like I said, not as likely since they're probably focusing on Smash, but that's still a while from now, okay? I am so excited for this Breath of the Wild sequel, specifically because I'm looking forward to what they're going to offer, what's going to be new on the table. I can see a lot of the previous Sheikah runes, tablet things returning, but I also see a lot of new ones being incorporated. Perhaps maybe that even being a reward for completing these more larger dungeons, similar to how in past Zeldas where you would unlock a new key item or tool to then progress farther, like a hook shot or the hammer or the ball and chain, stuff like that. There could be something similar where you can continue to get runes throughout the progression of the game, rather than how the first game gave you the entire tool set and you experimented throughout the rest of the game. I'm looking forward to what new is going to be on the table, but at the end of the day, now I'm thinking, okay, what is the 3D Mario team working on now? Because you know what? If they're working on Breath of the Wild 2, I would not even blink if they announced that an Odyssey 2 is going to be coming at some point, because those were the two biggest titles of the Switch's first year. Still two of the biggest titles on Switch in general. So Breath of the Wild is getting a sequel. I wouldn't even question it if we could probably see a Mario Odyssey sequel coming down the line pretty soon as well. That would be crazy. Could you imagine 2020, ready? 2020 releases. Animal Crossing New Horizons, Breath of the Wild 2 for the holiday, and like in the middle of summer or maybe late fall we get Odyssey 2 or something. Like, oh my gosh. It would feel like a repeat of the first year of the Switch, which in my opinion is still the best year of the Switch. And that'd be crazy. Both the two pillars of the Switch getting sequels in the same year again, like, I don't want to get my hopes up. Odyssey 2 could maybe still be a ways off, but realistically, I thought that was going to come before Breath of the Wild 2, but it looks like we're getting that one. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Because at the end of the day, they still could say Breath of the Wild 2 could still be a 2021 game, and maybe in between that, Odyssey could be for next year. But I'm curious, what are your guys' thoughts on Breath of the Wild 2? How excited are you guys? Because I know for many people, it's not only the most anticipated, but the most exciting announcement of E3 2019. So definitely let me know that in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a big, awesome like. And if you haven't already, definitely subscribe for tons more on Nintendo Switch, as well as obviously Breath of the Wild 2 coverage as they eventually announce stuff. So thanks again, guys, so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!